My daughter, it turns out, didn't hang up the phone. She had no idea I was still on the line. And then I heard her words. He's become a burden. This house is worth almost $1.5 million. We'll sell it, find him some place, and then finally buy that home in Aspen. She said it without any hesitation. Not a whisper. She planned my exile like it was some kind of business meeting. That's how I found out they were going to put me in a nursing home. The daughter for whom I'd built this house with my own hands. The man she married, whom I allowed to live under my roof rent-free for over a year. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just sold the house for $1,200,000 in cash. They came back from their trip smiling, but their keys no longer fit the lock. And on the door, my letter was waiting for them. You can't even imagine how pale their faces turned when they realized what I had already done. The day it all began, I was sitting in my Abigail's old armchair. I had a plate of reheated meatloaf on my lap and the TV remote in my hand, although I hadn't turned the television on for hours. The house was too quiet, even the spring breeze rattling the kitchen window didn't help. The name, Olivia, lit up on the phone's screen. I smiled foolishly. Hi, Dad, she said. Just calling to see how you are. Are you doing okay? Her voice was so soft and sweet, it always disarmed me. I'm eating well, I replied. Just having dinner. Abigail's old recipe. Oh, that's good, she answered. And the stove? You didn't forget to turn it off this time, did you? She was pretending to be concerned. Pretending to check in on me. I didn't understand it then, but she was laying the groundwork, not for support, but for justification. The kind people use when they want to take something from you while convincing themselves they're doing it out of love. I reassured her, as I always did. I caught it in time. Don't worry. She laughed, but it wasn't the same laugh from her childhood. Not the one that used to echo off the garage walls when I built her a dollhouse. No, this laugh was tense, thin, forced. After a few more pleasantries, she said she had to run. Dinner with some potential investors. Of course. And then she didn't hang up. Or maybe she thought she did. I clearly heard the rustle of her purse. And then her voice came through, sharp and clear. Ethan, he forgot to turn off the burner again. He's slipping. I froze. Ethan's reply was casual, mechanical. It's time, Olivia. He's a good man, but he's becoming a liability. A liability? That word stuck in me. Like a nail driven into a board slightly off-center. It splinters something. Olivia replied. We can get at least $1,300,000 for the house. And with the Salt Lake City real estate market, maybe even more. We'll find him a nice place. Not too expensive, just decent. And then she laughed. The same mouth that once said, You're the best dad in the world. Now twisted into a smile as she planned my removal. My fingers went numb. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the hardwood floor that Abigail and I had laid together 25 years ago. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat motionless, like a man who had just discovered he was already a ghost in his own home. The silence after betrayal is different. It has texture, weight. I remember that night it felt like the walls were closing in, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I looked at Abigail's photograph on the mantelpiece, her favorite one, a candid shot from our 30th anniversary at Zion National Park. She was laughing in that photo. God, she had the kind of laugh that made people in other rooms smile. Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful, she once told me. I gave everything, and Olivia forgot. It was almost midnight when I opened the kitchen drawer, the one with receipts and old warranty cards. At the very back was a faded envelope with our original mortgage documents. It still smelled of the lemon cleaner Abigail used every Saturday. I pulled out the deed. Frank and Abigail Miller. No liens, no co-signers, no shared ownership. It was mine. I went to my office and opened the drawer where I kept the business card Abigail had insisted we save just in case. Michael Vance, real estate attorney. I called him the next morning. Mr. Miller, he said. I remember you and your wife from way back. I'm sorry for your loss. She would have wanted me to protect what we built, I said. And that was the truth. Walking through the house that morning was like walking through a museum, not just of our memories, but of my labor. Every room told a story I had written with my own hands. The crown molding in the dining room. I carved it myself over 4 weekends because Abigail saw it in a magazine and said, "Wouldn't that be lovely?" The bay window in the living room. That was her reading nook. I bled through my gloves building it. The granite countertop in the kitchen. Abigail chose the slab because she said the gold veins looked like sunlight caught in marble. I couldn't afford to hire contractors, so I installed it myself. I lifted each section as if it might break me. It almost did. And now Olivia, who took her first steps in that kitchen, wanted to sell it. Worse, she wanted to sell me. David Reed arrived on Wednesday afternoon. He looked at the place like a man who knew exactly what it was worth, not just on paper, but in terms of craftsmanship. "This is incredible," he said. I said nothing, just nodded. He took pictures, asked questions. I answered like an old carpenter explaining his tools. When he asked about the time frame, I told him I needed it wrapped up before they got back. A cash offer was preferred, so he said he'd work on it. By Thursday, he had lined up a few offers. I ended up picking the one that came with a no strings attached, full price offer and a quick closing. It was for $925,000 in cash. It was way more money than they had ever imagined, and they had no idea any of it was happening. I got out of there quietly. All I took was Ellen's jewelry box, our wedding album, and her favorite mug, the one that said, "Still in love since '75. I left everything else behind to make it look like I'd rushed out the door. Let them think I was out of my mind. I rented a little studio apartment in a quiet retirement village in the next town over. It was a month-to-month lease, simply furnished. It didn't feel like home, but it was peaceful. Before I left the old house, I changed the locks, paid for them in cash, and didn't get a receipt. I also put a little spy camera, hidden inside a phone charger, in the front hallway. It was pointed right at the front door, ready to catch every bit of shock and disbelief when they tried to get in. Then I wrote the letter. It was a single page, no anger, just the facts. "Dear Allison and Chris, I heard about your plan. The one where you called me a burden. The one where you decided to sell my life before I was even gone. The house has been sold for $925,000. The money is mine. All your stuff is at the Liberty Storage on Main Street. You've got 30 days to get it. You wanted me out of the picture. Well, I made it easy for you. Love, Dad." I taped the envelope to the front door and walked away. I wasn't running from them. I was finally done waiting around for people who had already moved on without me. The first night in the new apartment felt strange, like wearing a stranger's coat. It fit, sure, but it didn't smell like home. No familiar creak on the floorboards outside the bedroom. No sound of the wind rattling the gutter that Ellen always said we'd get fixed next spring. No quiet ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. But the silence wasn't lonely. It felt earned. I lay there, just looking at the ceiling. Ellen's photo was on the nightstand beside me. She was smiling, as she always did in pictures. But this time, it felt different. It was like she knew this moment would come, long before I did. As if she trusted I would eventually find the guts to do what needed to be done. "I did it, sweetheart," I whispered into the dark. "You'd be proud." The apartment had the faint smell of fresh paint and industrial carpet cleaner. It was the kind of place where nothing had roots, and maybe that was a good thing. I didn't want roots anymore. Not here. Not yet. The next morning, I walked a couple of blocks to the little shopping plaza behind the community garden. I found a local coffee shop called Grounds for Change. A barista with bright pink hair and a nose ring smiled at me, and it seemed genuine. "You must be new," she said. "Just moved in," I replied. "Let me guess, another refugee from Lindenwood Heights?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. Something like that. Everybody's moving out of those neighborhoods these days, she said. Is it the taxes or the drama? She gave me a wink. I smiled, surprised at how easy it was. Something like that, I repeated. You got anything strong enough to wake the dead? She grinned. You're in luck. Our Colombian roast can raise the living dead. I sat by the window with my coffee, just watching the street. Watching people living lives that didn't need hidden cameras or secret letters or new locks. Watching an elderly couple arguing over pastries and then laughing about it a few seconds later. Watching a golden retriever trying and failing to catch a squirrel. It was quiet, it was normal. And I realized I hadn't felt normal in a long time. Not since Ellen's sickness. Not since Allison started calling only when she needed something. Not since Chris moved in and started talking to me like I was the hired help. By noon, I was back in the apartment pacing. I opened the box where I'd put away my old papers and took out the little black notebook I used to carry with me on every job site. Inside, my handwriting was tight and precise, with sketches of every support beam I'd ever put in and every cost estimate I'd calculated by hand. I was never a rich man, but I had built things that mattered. And I'd be damned if I let anyone take that away from me just because they thought I was too tired to put up a fight. I picked up my phone and opened the camera app linked to the charger camera I'd left behind. The front hallway of my old house appeared on the screen. It was still quiet, with the soft light of the late afternoon sun coming through the window. The envelope was still taped to the door. I watched for a long time, my phone in my hand, my heart steady. They would be home tomorrow. That evening, I went online and ordered a second camera. This one was hidden in a small desk clock. I wanted another view, just in case. Call it overkill, call it paranoia. I wasn't taking any chances. I also called a storage facility and paid for 3 months on their unit under my daughter's name. I had moved her boxes there myself the day before, all labeled and stacked neatly. Everything from her wedding dress to Chris's fancy desk that I'd bought for him when he was looking for a job. I wanted to make it impossible for them to claim they didn't know where their stuff went. I had put the address and unit number in the letter. I wanted everything to be clean, precise, and documented, just like the buildings I used to put up from a set of blueprints. Friday morning, I woke up at 5:45 in the morning. I didn't need an alarm. My mind was already wide awake. I made coffee, ironed my best shirt, and sat in the same chair as the day before, watching the camera feed on my phone. The entrance to the house had not changed, but the air around it seemed to be charged, like before a thunderstorm. By 10 a.m., I had already reread the contract for the sale of the house 3 times. The money that Hans Mayer had transferred was already in my new account. No one could touch it but me. It was not just money, it was proof. Proof that I still had power. That I had not given up. That I had not lost my dignity just because pensioners could now reduce their pharmacy allowance. At 4:12 p.m., a black SUV pulled up to the entrance. Allison's car. She got out first, wearing sunglasses, a cup of coffee from the coffee house in her hand, scrolling through her phone. Chris followed her out, as always, looking at his watch. They rolled their suitcases into the house as if it belonged to them, because they thought so. I looked harder. Allison reached into her purse, pulled out her keys, and smiled before inserting them into the lock. Then a pause. The key wouldn't turn. She frowned, tugged at it, tried again. Her head tilted slightly. That small movement of confusion turned into alarm. Chris walked over to her. "What's wrong?" he asked. "My key doesn't work." "Try again." "I've tried." "Let me try." He took the key and tried it himself, as if his manly hands couldn't somehow change reality. No luck. Then came the second act. He went to the back door, tried it, but nothing. The garage remote didn't work either. And then they saw the envelope. I saw Allison's hand tremble as she peeled it away from the door. I imagined the paper feeling between her fingers, the same paper she used for her wedding invitations. It's amazing how memory works. It's amazing how betrayal leaves a paper trail. She opened it and read it. Chris looked over her shoulder. Silence, and then her voice, low and shaky. He sold it. Chris didn't say a word. Then panic set in. Where's our stuff? What should we do? Call him. No answer. Email. Nothing. Everything's gone. Chris said, as if he couldn't believe it, as if reality had just been rewritten right before his eyes. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't smiling. Not yet. Because justice is no joke. It's payback. Let me tell you something no one prepares you for. When you finally get up after being underestimated, the world doesn't thrive. It's watching. He watches because he doesn't know what to do with a person who refuses to stay in the place she was quietly taken from. That night I opened the bottle of Bordeaux that Ellen and I had been saving for our 45th anniversary. She didn't live to see her, but this moment felt right. I poured myself a glass, placed her photo across from me on the small kitchen table, and whispered. They thought I was done. They thought I was just going to let it all go. But I didn't build a house with my own hands just to be thrown out with it. And I didn't raise a daughter just to be buried alive. That night they returned to their rented apartment empty-handed, angry and ashamed. And I slept soundly because for the first time in 2 years I wasn't surviving, I was living my life. The next morning, sunlight flooded the small window of my apartment like never before. There was no smell of the coffee Ellen had been making on the first draft. There was no sound of the piano from the living room. There was no scent of lemon wax on the oak floor, but it was still peaceful. And I knew, of course, that peaceful didn't have to be wrapped in memory. Sometimes peaceful came with a lock and key and a silence that no one could take away from you. I spent the morning organizing, digitizing the documents Ellen and I had kept in plastic containers for years. Tax returns, tuition checks, letters and hand-drawn birthday cards from Allison, when she was still the girl who called me her hero. Now she called me a burden. I found a receipt from her wedding florist, $4.75. I remember paying cash. Chris said they would refund my money. They never did. There was also a printout of the reference email I had written for Chris. The company had been skeptical of him after he was fired. But I vouched for him, writing that he was organized and principled. Now I saw the letter for what it was, a false brick in the foundation of my betrayal. Around 10 a.m., I logged into my new bank account. The amount was staring at me, $888,275.88. I had paid some closing costs, the locksmith fee, the storage space, the deposit on the apartment, and 2 months of living expenses, but I still had more money left than I had ever seen before. That wasn't bad for someone they thought could be sent to some institution and forgotten. But I was still a little nervous. So I made an appointment with a financial advisor, a real one this time. He had all the paperwork in his own office, not just a LinkedIn profile and a firm handshake like Chris had once had. His name was Marcus Lewis. He was in his 50s, quiet, with sharp eyes behind silver glasses. He didn't even blink when I mentioned the amount. I want the money safe, I said. Out of reach. Where no one else can touch it, even if they cry. He nodded understandingly. Most of our clients your age are trying to protect their money from creditors, and you're trying to protect your money from family. He didn't look surprised, just tired. Family, I said flatly. It can be more dangerous than debt collectors. He paused before answering. Mr. Gray, you're not the first person to sit in this chair with a broken heart and a big check, but you might be the first to do something about it before the damage is irreparable. I liked him immediately. We divided the money into 3 parts, a high-interest savings account, a conservative investment portfolio, and a trust. The trust that Ellen and I had once planned for Allison's future children. It was now in Ellen's name to fund scholarships for girls at technical schools. No inheritances for the ungrateful, only for those who would make something with their own hands. That evening my phone rang, and it was from an unknown number. I knew the area code. It was Allison. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, I got a voicemail. I didn't listen to him right away. I poured myself a glass of water, folded my laundry, and watched the sunset bathe the city in soft gold. Then I pressed play. Dad, please call me back. Please. We got home and it was gone. You changed the locks. Here's a note. And that's not what I meant. It was just stress. Chris was joking. We were just talking. We didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. Okay? She scrunched her nose. She wasn't crying. Allison always had a way of looking upset without actually feeling it. You're scaring me, she said. Where are you? Are you okay? Please don't push me away. That's not what I meant. Click. No apologies for the words. Just fear of the consequences. This is what cheating looks like in real life. Not like in the movies. No grand confession. No tears on a wet doorstep. Just manipulation. Just self-preservation. Just someone trying to pick a lock they never respected. The next morning I visited the house for the last time to meet the buyers and hand over the final paperwork. They were a young couple, Michael and Clara, both schoolteachers. She was pregnant. He brought a tape measure and a pad of paper. They didn't ask why I was selling, but Clara looked around the living room and said, "You must have loved this place." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I loved the person I built it with." Her eyes softened, and in that moment the house was no longer mine. They suggested I walk through the house again by myself. I declined. Some endings deserve a quick ending, not a slow goodbye. That evening I walked in the park behind my apartment. A woman played the violin by the gazebo, a boy rode a scooter, 2 senior citizens fed the birds. Life went on as usual. And I allowed myself to wonder for a moment what might have been different if Allison had made a different choice. Not just on the phone, but in my heart. If she remembered the nights I helped her with her science projects. If she remembered Ellen crying on her wedding day, proud and sad. If she remembered who had paid for her life in years, not just dollars. But she didn't. And that's the thing about forgetting your roots. Eventually, the whole tree crumbles. On Sunday, I got another voicemail. Shorter, more intense. Dad, we need to talk. Please, it's not too late to fix this. We'll figure something out. I need to know you're okay. It's we again. There was never any we. It was always just me. Me, who cleaned cement from under her nails to pay for her college. Me, who worked double shifts to pay for her honeymoon. Me, who watched my wife fade away in the hospital while Allison skipped visits because she was tired. And now she needs a we. I left a voicemail. That night I wrote a letter, not to Allison, but to myself. A promise I would never again allow love to use as a tool to control me. That I would protect what I had left. Not money, but dignity, self-respect, the right to decide when and how I would take my final steps. Ellen wanted it. No, Ellen knew it. That's why she whispered it before she died. Don't let them bury you before you're gone. And I didn't. Not this time. I heard nothing from her on Monday. No calls, no voicemails, no fake apologies. And that silence told me something. They had tried to fix it. Now they were trying to control the fallout. I brought up the scene. Allison is pacing the rented apartment, trying to find someone to blame but herself. Chris sits on the edge of the couch, hunched over his laptop, searching the internet. Can a father legally sell the family home without telling you? Can a house sale be reversed if you're not on the deeds? How do you get money back from an elderly father who cheated on you? He uses the word betrayed. Not abandoned, not hurt, not even forgot. Betrayed. Because for people like him, loyalty only matters when it benefits them. That day I went to Grounds for Change. Same corner, same coffee, same calm. Lily, the pink-haired barista, waved at me as she handed me a fresh cup. You always look like someone with secrets. I raised an eyebrow. And you look like someone who wants to hear them. She smiled. No, I just see that you look happier than when you first came here. Happier. A strange word for someone who has lost everything familiar. But she was right. Guilt is heavier than anger. Resentment sticks like wet cement. And freedom, even in small doses, flies. On Tuesday, I received a letter, a real one. No digital signature, no smileys, just ink on paper. Allison's handwriting was less rounded now. Perhaps it was the result of too many business reports, and not enough birthday cards. The letter was short. Dad, I don't understand how you could do this. I know you're hurting. I know what I said on the phone was terrible. But selling the house, it was our home. It was my childhood. You took everything away. You didn't even tell me you were okay. Chris says you're going to regret this. Please talk to me, Allison. That line, it was my childhood, made me pause because yes, it was her childhood, but it was my adulthood. It was my marriage. It was my life. She lived in this house, but I was shedding my blood there. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat down and opened Ellen's favorite notebook, the one covered in leather with wild flowers embossed on the corners. She used it for ideas she never had time for. Short stories, shopping lists, names for the children we never used. Inside was a list I hadn't seen in years. Things that make this house a home. The sound of Herbert's hammer on Sunday mornings. The sound of Allison's bare feet running down the hallway. Coffee at 6:43 a.m. every morning. My window and its silence. The weight of his jacket on the hanger when he walks in. Laughter, even if there's no reason. Forgiveness. Hope. She wrote this in 2010, 15 years before our daughter tried to monetize it all. Wednesday brought more silence, but I didn't sit idly by. I met with Marcus, the counselor, again. We discussed trust, power of attorney, and medical directives. Not because I was giving up, but because I wasn't going to do it, and I never wanted anyone to mistake my silence for consent again. He suggested getting a real estate lawyer. I agreed. Control wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about planning. I had spent 25 years building a physical house. Now I was building an invisible one, a fortress that no one could destroy, just because I smiled at brunch and called myself family. On Thursday night, I got another voicemail, but it wasn't from Allison. It was from Chris. Herbert, it's Chris. I was trying to be respectful, but this is getting out of hand. I don't know what Allison said to you or what you think you heard, but this was never meant to be hostile. We were thinking about your health, your future. Selling the house would help all of us, including you. We were trying to protect you. He paused. That fake breath people take when trying to sound composed. I'll be honest. Allison's not okay. You caught her off guard. She's devastated. You're her only parent left. Do you want to die so she thinks you hate her? He hung up without saying goodbye. It was a Chris thing. It always was. He was nice in the beginning, but terrible in the end. That night I checked their social media. Allison's profile picture was still the same. It was a wedding photo I had paid for. Her social media feed was quiet. But Chris, he was selling things. Executive desk, $470. Negotiable. Luxury mattress, almost new, pick up. Mercedes E-Class, needs transmission overhaul. Negotiable. Desperation is in plain sight if you know where to look. I sat back and turned off my phone. There was nothing more to say. The next morning I did something simple. I went to the garden. Yes, the garden. The one Ellen had always wanted but never had time for. I found a small plot in our town, tucked away in a corner by the benches. A quiet spot. I planted 2 rows of marigolds and 1 row of tomatoes. My back ached, my knees creaked, but damn, it felt good. There is something honest about the soil. She doesn't care who betrayed you. She just asks for water and patience. And when I wiped my hands on my jeans and stood up, I felt free again. Not younger, just more alive. Later that night, I was walking past a bulletin board. One flyer caught my eye. Veterans Game Night Thursday, 7 p.m. Community Center Room B. Newcomers welcome. I almost walked past. But then I changed my mind. That night, I was playing chess with a man named Arthur, who had lost 2 toes in Vietnam. He beat me in 6 moves. We laughed like we were 10 years old again. It turns out that grief doesn't go away. It just gives way. It makes room for other things, like new beginnings. And for people who call you by your name instead of your worth. And then, on Saturday morning, something strange happened. I received a package. No return address, no note. Inside was a photo of Ellen, Allison, and me from her prom. The one with Ellen's eyes shining with pride and Allison leaning against me like they used to. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it down. I wasn't ready to hang it up again. Not yet. But I wasn't going to throw it away, because some memories don't need justice. They just need peace. It all started with a job posting. I came across it by chance while reading a furniture ad. Marketing Director, Munich Tech. 8+ years experience required. No current disciplinary actions, no pending lawsuits. And right below it was a comment. Avoid anyone named Allison Hayes. Serious ethical violations. The username was anonymous. But the pain behind it was real. I called Marcus, my financial advisor, just to talk. He always answered. Marcus, have you ever heard of Munich Tech? After a pause, he smiled dryly. They're ruthless. One ethics complaint and you'll be blacklisted. Why? No reason, I said. I just wonder who's hiring there. He didn't press me. A smart man. That evening I checked Chris's LinkedIn. The page was gone. No updates, no contacts, no open for work. Just gone. It takes a special kind of nerve to burn bridges and forget that you're still standing on one of them. 3 days later, another letter arrived. Typed, neatly margined, emotionless. Dear Dad. We contacted an attorney. He told us that while you had the legal right to sell the house, your decision caused emotional and financial harm to your only family. Chris lost access to potential clients because of your sudden change of address and professional image. We ask that you reconsider your decision to set aside a portion of the proceeds, even a modest percentage, to help us get back on our feet. Your actions have hurt, but we believe that healing is still possible. Allison. I didn't respond. Instead, I went out into the garden. My tomatoes were starting to bloom. I plucked one leaf and held it in the sun. The veins, the structure, the balance. Not because someone told it how to grow, but because it just did. That night I wrote a note. Not to Allison, not to Chris, but to Ellen. They're falling apart, honey. Not because I hit them, but because they climbed up someone else's stairs too fast. And when you climb too high without gratitude, the fall teaches you everything. I hid her in her old novel, the one she never finished. Page 247. Still bent. The voicemail came the next morning. Dad, I'm pregnant. A pause. I just found out. I haven't even told Chris yet. I thought maybe it would make a difference. Maybe you'd want to be a part of their lives before it's too late. And there it was again. Bait wrapped in biology, laced with guilt. I didn't react. Not right away. Instead, I got up, poured myself a glass of water, stepped out onto my little balcony, and let the morning air remind me that it wasn't about blood. It was about respect. And my name. My presence was not a tool to be used when their comfort was at stake. I deleted the message. At the community center, I was asked to speak at a monthly Veterans Roundtable. Nothing special, Arthur said. Just stories. I showed up wearing a button-down shirt that Ellen had bought me 20 years ago. Tell us something true, someone asked. Something that saved you. I thought for a second and then said, don't mix up love and loyalty. They just blinked. Love can live on without loyalty, but loyalty without love will ruin everything. It got quiet. Then someone whispered, "Damn." Later that week, Lily from the coffee shop brought me a sandwich on her break. "You're getting pretty popular around here, you know," she said. "Arthur told me you made him rethink how he talks to his kids." I chuckled. "That wasn't my plan." "Well, maybe the plan doesn't matter," she replied. "Maybe the truth does." She paused. "You ever think about teaching?" "Teaching what?" She just shrugged. "Whatever made you walk away and not look back?" I thought about that on my way home and again the next morning. By then, Ellison had stopped trying to sound nice. Her final message was pure ice. "You pick strangers over your own daughter, over your future grandchild. I hope you enjoy your tomatoes and your bit of pride." And for the first time since this whole thing started, I laughed out loud. Because they still didn't get it. This wasn't about tomatoes or money or even getting even. It was about the truth and being clear, and how some people think your silence is a weakness until you show them just how loud it can be. I never called her back. I never explained myself, because the thing about dignity is that once you get it back, you don't owe it to anyone else ever again. That Sunday, the couple who bought my old house sent me a card. "Mr. Hayes, we hope we've done your home justice. The big bay window is now a story corner for our little girl. Thank you for building something that still holds people together." I read it twice. Then I put it next to Ellen's photo. And I whispered, "We did good." Some mornings start out quiet, others start with sirens. This one started with a knock, solid, sharp, 3 times. I opened the door, and there was Mrs. Choi, the apartment manager, with a polite but serious look on her face. "There's a young woman downstairs asking for you," she said. "She won't give me her name. Says it's urgent." I didn't move. "She doesn't look so good," Mrs. Choi added, her voice softening. I nodded once, put on my jacket, and followed her down. It was Ellison. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup. A jacket that looked way too big on her. For a split second, just one, I saw the version of her I remembered from when she was a kid. Scraped knees, clumsy arms, and eyes full of questions. Now her eyes looked tired, with dark circles under them. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there in the middle of the walkway, clutching her phone like a lifeline nobody had grabbed. "I couldn't find you," she finally said. I just waited. "Your number changed. Your landline was disconnected. I didn't know where you were." "That was the whole point," I said quietly. A look of shame crossed her face. "Or maybe it was fear. They're pretty close." I'm sorry." She looked at the ground. Her voice was thinner now. "No sweetness, no tricks. I didn't know what else to do." I still waited. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she added quickly. "I just wanted to see you, to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," I said. "Are you?" She blinked, then shook her head. We walked in silence to a bench near the community garden. "The tomatoes are doing well," she noticed. "I never stopped," I replied. She sat down next to me and didn't speak for a long time. Her hands were fidgeting. She always did that when she felt guilty. "Chris is gone," she said all of a sudden. I turned my head a little. "He took what was left in our joint account, cleared out the credit cards, said he was going to figure himself out in Phoenix. I haven't heard from him in 3 weeks." I said nothing. We had eviction notices, 2 of them. I borrowed money from an old friend, slept on her couch for 2 nights, and got food poisoning from a can of soup. I still said nothing. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because part of healing is letting the silence do what words can't. I kept thinking maybe you'd call or text, just to yell at me. "I'm not mad," I said. She turned to me sharply. "Not mad?" "No." "Then why?" "Because I don't have to be mad to leave." That stopped her. "You always made me feel like I could come to you with anything," she said. "You could," I said. "Until you stopped seeing me as someone worth coming to." She flinched. "It wasn't cruel." It was just the truth. She took a shaky breath. I'm pregnant. I looked down at her hands. They were clenched tightly. I know what you're thinking, she added. That I'm using it. I'm not using it. I'm scared. I don't know how I'm going to do this without you. I looked into her eyes. You always knew where to find me when you needed something, Allison, but not when you regretted something. She looked away, embarrassed. I don't know if I can be a good mother, she whispered. And there it was. The wall cracked. Not with anger, but with the weight of her realization. You can't, I said. She looked at me again. But you're going to have to decide what kind of mother you want to be, and who you want this child to see you as. Her voice trembled. I don't want her to grow up thinking she can take people for granted. Then don't show her how to do it. She nodded, crying now. Silent tears. I don't expect anything from you, she said. Not money, not help. I miss you. There was a long pause. I miss my mom. I finally turned to her. She would forgive me, she said quietly. She would forgive me. I agree, I said. But she would also ask you why you waited so long to say it honestly. We sat in silence while a child laughed somewhere far away. A breeze blew through the garden, mixing the scents of basil and fresh earth. She wiped her face. I didn't offer to hug her. She didn't ask for it. But there we sat. Two people, not rebuilding, not repairing, just resting in the first honest moment we'd had in years. When she left, she didn't ask to come back, didn't ask for the keys, didn't mention the money. She simply said, I hope you want to see the child one day. I looked at her and said, That depends. Who you'll be by then. She nodded, not offended, just understanding. She turned and walked to her car and drove away. That night I sat at my little kitchen table. No music, no TV, just me and the sound of the wind gently tapping the windows. I opened Ellen's notebook and wrote one sentence. Today our daughter sat next to me, not lying. The next morning Arthur knocked on my door with a newspaper in his hand. Did you see that? He said. Some financier from Munich under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Chris something there. I picked up the newspaper. There it was. Former financial advisor, allegedly forged licenses for personal gain. Subject to civil and criminal proceedings. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I just folded the newspaper. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life does that for you. By the end of the week, I had a new routine. Mornings in the garden. Middays at the coffee shop. Afternoons I volunteered at the community center, helping seniors fill out insurance forms, and I led weekly home improvement for beginners sessions. I fixed a woman's closet hinge. I showed an ex-Marine how to patch drywall. I taught a retired librarian how to sand wood by touch, not by eye. Someone said, You should be a teacher. I said, Maybe I am. That week at the coffee shop, Lily slid a folded piece of paper over the counter to me. What's this? I asked. Essay contest, she said. Subject, the hardest goodbye. I thought of you. I laughed. Are you trying to make me famous? No, she said. Just trying to help the world hear you the way we do. That night I opened a blank page, typed the title. The hardest goodbye wasn't with my wife. It was goodbye to the version of myself that let people use me just because they could. And I started writing. I didn't look back or stop. 2 weeks passed. No more voicemails, no more letters, no more unexpected visits. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It breathed. I spent those days moving. Quiet, purposeful movement. Helping Arthur repair the fence at the community center, teaching Marjorie how to restore the nightstand her late husband had made in '75, sitting in the community garden, watching the light play on the leaves. No one asked about my daughter. No one tiptoed around, avoiding the subject. They simply accepted who I was now, not who I had been, not what I had lost, but simply who I was. And in that small, Ordinary kindness, I began to heal. Then the envelope arrived. Without sender, just a plain white envelope, stuck in my mailbox, with a Munich postmark. I slowly opened it. Dear Mr. Hayes. Congratulations. Your essay, The Hardest Goodbye, has been selected as one of 3 finalists in the Alpine Valley Writers' Reflections series. Your words deeply moved our panel. One judge wrote, I don't know who this person is, but she made me call my father. We would be honored to read your piece at a public event next month, if you would like to attend. Sincerely, Magda Hells, Editor-in-Chief. I put down the letter. I didn't move for a long time. Then I reached across the table and picked up Ellen's photo. I placed it next to the letter. Well, my dear, I murmured. I guess you've found your writer after all. I didn't tell a soul about it. Not Arthur, not Lily, not the guys at game night. I just let it sit inside me, like a low, steady fire. That quiet kind of happiness that doesn't need a party, just a good chair, a soft wind, and the feeling that someone, somewhere actually heard you. They heard me. 3 days before the reading, I got a letter. It was in a kid's handwriting. The letters were big, a little crooked, and pressed hard into the paper. Dear Grandpa Herbert, Mom says you live far away now. She also says you are the reason I have a garden name. My name is Marigold. Mom cries sometimes when she talks about you, but she also laughs. She said, one day I can meet you if I'm brave and kind. There was a little heart drawn next to the name. No return address. But I knew exactly where it came from. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror longer than usual, just staring at the man looking back at me. The gray in his beard, the lines around his eyes, the calmness that had taken the place of all the anger. I didn't look like I was broken. I didn't look like a guy who'd lost everything. I looked like a man who had earned this new version of himself. The day of the reading came, with a few clouds and just enough sun to make you feel like you mattered. I wore the dark blue jacket Ellen had bought me for Ellison's graduation. It still fit. The venue was a repurposed library with exposed brick and dim, comfortable lighting. I sat in the 3rd row until they called my name. I walked to the microphone. No notes in my hand, no shaking. Just my own breath and my memory. I was never really taught how to say goodbye. I started. Not to the people I loved. Not to the version of myself who put up with things he shouldn't have. Not to the house I built with my own hands and gave away bit by bit, all in the name of love. The room got completely silent. I looked at the faces in the crowd, people of all ages. Some holding hands, some on their own. Some were already tearing up. I kept going. I learned that goodbyes don't always happen with a slammed door or a teary hug. Sometimes it's a quiet decision you make at 3 in the morning. Sometimes it's putting on new locks. Sometimes it's choosing to write your own ending before someone else does it for you. I paused, letting them take it all in with me. And the hardest goodbye I ever had to say was to the man I was when I let people walk all over my boundaries, just because I was scared of being alone. Silence. Not empty, but full. I'm not scared anymore. I walked off the stage to some gentle applause, but one person in the back stood up. A woman with her arms crossed, holding a folded piece of paper in her hand. It was Ellison. She didn't come up to me afterward. Didn't rush over or fall into my arms like you see in movies. She just gave me a small nod, a real one, and then she left. That was enough. Back at my apartment, I found another note under my door. I wasn't ready before, but I'm learning. One day, I hope I'll be someone who deserves to sit on your porch swing and share your silence. Ellison. I put it in Ellen's notebook, right between the list of what made a house a home, and the page where I'd scribbled. Today, our daughter sat beside me without lying. Then I sat on my balcony. The sun was going down. A soft breeze was rustling the curtains. And in my hands I held the tomato I'd picked that morning. It wasn't perfect. It had a small bruise on one side. But it was mine. Grown on purpose, picked with care, and free from any rot. Just like me. I came across an envelope taped to a bulletin board by the garden. It was plain, white, with my name written in a familiar handwriting. They weren't the tense, guilty lines of her earlier notes, but more calm, thoughtful. Inside was a photograph, Allison standing in a small kitchen, not mine or hers, holding a baby in her arms. The little girl had soft curls and big brown eyes. She was holding a tomato and smiling broadly. On the back of the photograph was just one line. She picked it herself. I sat down on a bench by the garden and held the photograph for a long time, as if it were made of glass. The tears didn't flow. That part of me had dried up years ago. But something inside me opened up, and it wasn't pain, but the weight of forgiveness that didn't ask for anything in return. She wasn't asking me to come back. She was just showing me what had changed. And sometimes that's enough to make the ground beneath your feet shift. That evening I dialed the number Allison had left me months ago. I had never used it. It rang once, then twice. She answered. Her voice was calm, not strained, just open. Hello? I said. It's Herbert. Silence then. Hi, Dad. I waited. She took her time, didn't cry, didn't try to fill the air. I wasn't sure you'd ever call, she said finally. I wasn't sure either, I said. There was another pause, and then she said, Marigold talks about you, even though she's never seen you. What's she saying? I asked. That your hands built everything. I let those words settle between us. We didn't talk for long. I didn't ask where she lived, and she didn't ask if she could come visit. We didn't fix it. We observed, assessed the space, like a contractor inspecting a crack in the wall. Not to patch it up quickly, but to see if it was still worth saving. When we finished talking, she said, Thank you for calling. And this time it was said without any hidden meaning, just sincerity. The next day I planted marigolds in a corner of my garden. Not because of the name, but because of the color. They were bright, persistent. The kind of flowers that grow even in poor soil if you give them sunlight. Later that week, Lily gave me a small package at a cafe. No labels, she said. Someone just left it. Inside was a handmade children's book, bound with thread, with pencil drawings on every page. The book was called Grandpa Who Grows Tomatoes, written by Marigold. On the cover was a picture of a little man with a big gray mustache, red tomatoes, and a little girl with a smile holding a watering can. The last page said, He didn't talk much, but the tomatoes didn't. That night I sat by the window with the book on my lap. I didn't reread it. I just held it. Some things aren't meant to be reread, they're meant to be remembered. A week passed, then another. The garden turned golden. The air became soft. The birds returned. And one afternoon, as I was pulling weeds, I heard small footsteps on the gravel. I didn't look up right away, but I knew she was there because I heard a soft breath, and then a soft voice. Is that him? I turned slowly. She stood next to Allison. They were both dressed simply. No drama, no expectations. The girl's curls shone in the sun. Maybe, I said. Are you the one who grows tomatoes? She asked. She nodded fiercely. I grew one red one. All by myself. I smiled. It's not easy. It takes patience. I have a lot of it, she said proudly. Allison was silent. She just watched carefully, like a guest in the house that had once been hers. Do you want to see my drawing? The girl asked. I really want to, I replied. She handed me a folded piece of paper from her little jacket, on which was a drawing of a little man with gray hair, and next to him was a little girl holding his hand. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't discuss what was lost. We sat on a bench. She showed me her shoes, her scraped knee. She told me she liked bees but not their stings. Allison listened without interrupting. When it was time to go, the little girl asked, Can I come again? I looked at her mother. Allison met my eyes. I won't come unless you say so, she said quietly. I looked at the little girl, then at her drawing. You can come any time, I said. And maybe your mother will too. If she remembers her gloves next time, the garden is full of thorns. Allison nodded, not smiling, just calmly. They walked slowly. The little girl waved twice, then ran back to hug me, not because she was told to, but because she wanted to. I held her gently, as if she were something blooming. When she let go, she whispered, "I like your garden." I looked at Allison. "Me too," I said. That night I sat on the edge of my bed. No phone in my hand, no photos to go back to. Just me and the sound of the wind. I had given up hope. I wasn't hoping for anything any longer. I wasn't grieving anymore either. I was simply here, completely whole, and I understood that was a powerful enough feeling. Some people find their way back by walking right through a door. Other people find their way back through the soil, a little at a time. Marigold came back with a bag of seeds. "Zinnias," she said proudly, holding them like they were the greatest treasure. "They're my favorite now. They sound like cinnamon." I nodded. "They do," I said. Allison stood a few steps behind her. No camera, no phone, no questions, just standing there. That alone showed me that she was trying. We knelt down in the soil together. I showed her how to make a groove with her pinky. How to place the seeds with patience. How to press the soil down, not too hard, not too soft. "What a good promise," I said. "Firm, but not heavy." She nodded solemnly, as if I had just passed on some ancient spell to her. It had become our routine. Once a week, sometimes twice, she would show up with dirt under her nails and a new story from school or about how Auntie in the kitchen gave her extra pudding because she said please, and, in italics, Allison didn't always stay. Sometimes she would go for a walk around the block. Other times she would sit by, knitting something she never finished. We didn't talk about the past. We just planted things. One afternoon Marigold brought a book with her. "Mother says you read this to her." I picked it up. Stone Soup. The same faded copy, the cover still taped shut. Ellen's handwriting was in the margins. She crawled over to me on the garden bench. "Can you read that again?" So I did. She interrupted me halfway through. "Wait. So at first the villagers were scared, right?" "Right," I said. "But then they all shared and did something good." "Yes," I said. She was silent, then whispered, "Like us." I looked at her. She wasn't smiling. She was serious. "That's right," I said. Weeks passed. Marigold's drawings became more detailed. The little men became people with ears and fingers. The tomatoes now had stems, even shadows. Then one day she gave me a drawing of 3 people standing in front of a house. "Who are those?" I asked. "You," she pointed out. "That's me, and that's Mom." Allison was drawn smaller than me, but she was holding a watering can. "She says she's still learning," Marigold added, wiping a pencil smudge from the page. "She says she's trying to take things slow." I carefully folded the drawing. The slow way is the only way left. One Thursday, Allison showed up alone, her hands full, 2 Tupperware containers and a folded tea towel. She set them on the garden table without saying a word. Inside was a meatloaf, her mother's recipe. And something else I never thought I'd see again, lemon cakes with an uneven dusting of powdered sugar, like Ellen used to make. "I found my mother's recipe book," she said. "I used the same handwriting she used to write in. Even the oil stain." I didn't reach for it. She sat down slowly. "I'm not here to prove anything," she said quietly. "I just wanted her back. At least for dinner." I nodded, then picked up my fork. The meatloaf wasn't perfect. A little dry. But it had something about it that I hadn't tasted in years. Memory. After we ate in silence, Allison spoke again. "I went to a therapist. That surprised me more than anything else. I told her I never knew how to accept kindness if I couldn't control it." I looked up. She said it was because I saw Mom carrying it all on her own, never asking for help. And I saw you keep quiet so no one else would feel bad. Her voice broke, but she continued. I think I punished you for being resilient, because I never learned to be resilient. I waited. I can't fix all this, she added. But I can stop pretending it doesn't matter. I was still silent, because she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was offering to take responsibility. And that's much rarer than an apology. We didn't hug. We just sat there, with 2 plates between us, and the soft rustle of marigold stalks in the wind. The next week I taught Marigold how to use a hammer. Not to build anything big, just a small birdhouse. She held the handle tightly, her tongue sticking out, her tiny forehead furrowed in concentration. Easy, I said. You don't need strength. You need rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. When the last nail was driven in, she beamed. I made the house. I did, I said. She held it as if it were gold, then whispered, Do you think the birds will trust it? In time, I said. If we give it time and don't rush it. She nodded solemnly again. That evening, Allison wrote to me for the first time in months. Just 1 line. Thank you for teaching her what I never asked you to teach me. I replied. She's listening. And so are you. No smileys, no ellipses, just the truth. By fall, the valuables had bloomed. I no longer hoped for anything. And I didn't miss it. I was just here, whole, and I knew that was enough. Some people come back through the door. Others come back slowly through the soil. Marigold returned with a bag of seeds. Zinnias, she said proudly, holding it like a treasure. They're my favorites now. I nodded. Allison stood a few steps behind her. No camera, no phone, no questions, just present. That alone showed me she was trying. We knelt together in the soil. I taught her how to make a groove with her pinky finger. How to place the seeds with patience. How to press the soil down, not too hard, not too soft. Like a good promise, I said. Firm, but not heavy. She nodded solemnly, as if I had just passed on an ancient spell to her. This became our rhythm. Once a week, sometimes twice, she would show up with dirt under her nails and a new story from school or about how her aunt in the kitchen had given her extra pudding. Allison didn't always stay. Sometimes she would go for a walk around the block. Sometimes she would sit next to me, weaving something she never finished. We didn't talk about the past. We just planted things. One afternoon, Marigold brought a book with her. Mother says you read this to her. I picked it up. Stone Soup. The same faded copy, the cover still held on with tape. Ellen's handwriting was in the margins. She crawled over to me on the garden bench. Can you read it again? So I did. She cut me off halfway through. Wait. So at first the villagers were scared, right? Right. But then they all shared and did something good. Yes. She paused, then whispered, Like us. I looked at her. She wasn't smiling. She was serious. That's right, I said. Weeks passed. Marigold's drawings became more detailed. The little men became people with ears and fingers. The tomatoes now had stems, even shadows. Then one day she gave me a drawing of 3 people standing in front of a house. Who are these? I asked. You. She pointed. That's me, and that's Mom. Allison was drawn smaller than me, but she was holding a watering can. She says she's still learning, Marigold added, wiping a pencil smudge from the page. She says she's trying to do things slowly. I carefully folded the drawing. The slow way is the only way left. One Thursday, Allison showed up alone, her hands full, 2 containers and a folded towel. She set them down on the patio table without saying a word. Inside was a meatloaf, her mother's recipe. And something else I never thought I'd see again, lemon cakes with an uneven dusting of powdered sugar, just like Ellen used to make. I found my mother's recipe book, she said. I used the same handwriting she used to write in. Even the oil stain. I didn't reach for it. She sat down slowly. I'm not here to prove anything. she said quietly. I just wanted to bring her back. At least for dinner. I nodded, then picked up my fork. The meatloaf wasn't perfect. A little dry. But it had something about it that I hadn't tasted in years. Memory. After we ate in silence, Allison spoke again. I went to a therapist. That surprised me more than anything else. I told her I never knew how to accept kindness when I couldn't control it. I looked up. She said it was because I saw Mom carry it all on her own, never asking for help. And I saw you keep quiet so no one else would feel bad. Her voice broke, but she continued. I think I punished you for being stubborn, because I never learned to be stubborn. I waited. I can't fix all this, she added. But I can stop pretending it doesn't matter. I still stayed silent because she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was offering to take responsibility. And that's much rarer than an apology. We didn't hug. We just sat there, with 2 plates between us, and the soft rustle of marigold stems in the wind. The following week I taught Marigold how to use a hammer. Not to build anything big, just a small birdhouse. She held the handle tightly, her tongue sticking out, her tiny forehead furrowed in concentration. Easy, I said. You don't need strength. You need rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. When the last nail was driven in, she beamed. I've made a house. I have, I said. She held it as if it were gold, then whispered, Do you think the birds will trust it? In time, I said. If we give it time and don't rush it. She nodded solemnly again. That evening, Allison wrote to me for the first time in months. Just 1 line. Thank you for teaching her what I never asked you to teach me. I replied. She's listening. And so are you. No smileys, no ellipses, just the truth. By fall, the zinnias were in bloom. Bright, bold. Like people who have weathered a storm and are not afraid to grow back into the light. Allison brought a small framed photograph into the garden. It was Ellen, young, smiling, holding little Allison next to a row of unfinished wooden stairs. She built it. She whispered. I know, I said. I thought you were the one who made the house safe, but now I think it was both of you. We stood there for a while. Neither of us reached for the frame. We just stared together. Later, I put the photograph in a birdhouse. A house within a house. A reminder that some foundations don't need cement, only memory and care. Winter came without a knock. One morning I went outside and the garden was silver, the frost curling like lace on the zinnias and the marigolds bowed their heads with dignity. Even the birdhouse was quiet. But that was good. Silence, I learned, is not the absence of life. Sometimes it is a seed waiting. Marigold came less often in the cold, but she still showed up. Sometimes with Allison wrapped in scarves. Sometimes just with a scratch drawing, tucked into my mailbox, folded 5 times with a sticker on top. She never signed them. She didn't have to. I knew every line was hers. One day I found a drawing taped to the barn door. 3 flowers, 1 small, 1 medium, 1 tall, all growing from the same patch of earth. Above them was the sun. That was it. Allison didn't bring food anymore. Instead, she brought herself. She helped rake the frozen leaves, asked about composting, sat next to me on the garden bench, not trying to fill the air. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. But the lack of any pretense was a real miracle. We never said those words. Not, I'm sorry, or, I forgive you, or, I miss you. But in early December, I handed Marigold a wrapped box, and inside were a pair of children's gardening gloves. Worn but still good. Ellen. She would like you to have them, I said. Marigold held them as if they were sacred. She didn't put them on, she just nodded. Then she whispered, Can we plant more things next spring? We can plant anything you want, I said. Christmas passed without any big reunions, no gifts sent, no awkward dinners, just a box of lemon cakes that Allison had left on my doorstep and a card drawn in pencil. Merry Christmas. With love, your little Roots. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. In January, Arthur died quietly in his sleep. I was at the service, reading a poem that Ellen had once loved. After the service, Allison came up to me outside the church. She said nothing, just put her hand in mine and walked me to the car. That was the moment I realized that what had once been broken between us was no longer sharp. Spring came slowly. This time, Marigold planted carrots. Because they hide treasures, she explained. You have to believe they're there before you see them. I smiled. Like most good things, I said. Allison brought tea, listened more than she spoke, sometimes offered to weed without asking. The soil changed, and so did she. One afternoon, after watering the garden, Marigold sat down next to me and asked, Grandpa, will this garden be here forever? No, I said gently. Nothing lasts forever. She frowned. But what if it's gone? Then I said, putting my hand on hers, someone will remember what it was like here, and maybe plant another. She was silent for a while, then stood up, shook her knees, and said, Then I'll remember it twice as much. A month later I got a letter. Not from Allison, not from Marigold, but from the city. They were expanding the community lot. They wanted to turn the back half of the garden into a permanent educational area for children, seniors, and veterans. They asked if I would be the first mentor for the program. I did. Not because of my qualifications, not because I was someone's father, but because, as the letter said, you seem to grow things that last. I said yes, not for the sake of legacy, not for ego, but because Ellen would. Because that's what a good garden does. It teaches. It gives without demanding. It weathers the storms. And then quietly passes the tools to the next hand. The last time Marigold came that spring, she brought a notebook. I'm writing a book, she announced. Can you be in it? Only if I'm funny. I smiled. You'll be brave, she said. I didn't correct her. That evening I sat under the gazebo as the sun was setting. The garden was full of stories, not just plants. Every corner held memories. Every row of herbs whispered something Ellen had once taught me. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I was expecting anything. Not forgiveness, not understanding, not even love. Because somehow, without fanfare, without permission, I had already found it. And maybe that is the quiet miracle that no one teaches. Sometimes your greatest revenge is not rage, not fire, not exile. It is peace grown with your own hands. Shared with those who thought they broke you, and blossomed in the eyes of a child who knows you only as a man who grows tomatoes and never gives up the sunlight.